The moment you stop reacting like before is the moment they stop recognizing the power they once had over you. They thought you'd reply in a heartbeat. One "hey" and you'd come running. One vague message and you'd be back, talking, explaining, hoping. But something shifted, didn't it? Something deep. And now, the one who used to have you wrapped around their finger can't even get a reaction. My friends, that's not coldness. That's evolution. If you've ever stared at your screen, wondering what to do when they suddenly pop back up like nothing happened, this video is for you, because today we're flipping the script. We're talking strategy, silence, self-respect, the stuff they never saw coming, the kind of power that doesn't need to shout. It just is. So before we dive deep, hit that like button, press subscribe, and turn on the bell. Not for me, but for the version of you that's finally done being the backup plan. Stay with me. Hey folks, imagine this. You've spent months rebuilding a house someone else burned down, alone, brick by brick. You hammered through sleepless nights, painted over memories, cleaned up the chaos. And just when the walls are finally standing again, that same person knocks at the door like nothing ever happened. No apology, no explanation, just a soft little knock saying, "Hey, I thought of you." It's like someone throwing glitter on a wound and calling it healing. Pretty on the surface, but it still stings underneath. That's what a message after silence really is. A sparkly lie with jagged edges. Let me tell you something raw. People don't just text out of nowhere. There's always something behind it. Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's ego. Maybe it's just them missing the version of you that didn't know better. But love? Real love doesn't disappear without a trace and return without accountability. That's not romance, that's manipulation. See, they don't always miss you, my friend. Sometimes they miss your reaction, your validation, your sweet responses, your immediate attention. They miss knowing they could disappear and still come back to a full plate. You became their comfort food in an emotional famine, and now they're hungry again. But what they don't know is that the kitchen's closed. You've changed, you've grown, you've gone silent, not to punish, but to protect. Because there comes a point where talking becomes begging and responding becomes bleeding. And you're done bleeding for people who only ever show up when their ego gets lonely. There's a quote I love. "You can miss me, but you can't reach me the same way anymore." That's what healing does. It builds a wall, not made of anger, but of calm, of clarity, of self-worth. And now? You don't respond because you need them. You respond only if it aligns with your peace. That's real power. And it scares the hell out of someone who thought you'd always be available. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to dissect this kind of message, break it open, look at the psychology behind it, learn how to reply or not reply with intention, with strength, with stoic energy. Because the real game changer isn't sending a clever text back, it's knowing you don't have to. You're not here to feed their ego. You're here to protect your energy. That's what this channel is all about. So stay with me, because the power is shifting now, and it's shifting in your favor. Write it in the comments, "I protect my peace." Let that be your affirmation, your mantra, your shield. And if that hits your soul even a little, then like this video, subscribe to the channel and stick around. Because what's coming next might just be the final move in a game you didn't even realize you were winning. Number 1, they didn't just message you, they tested you. The message isn't a connection, it's a calculation. And every second you don't respond is a crack in the control they thought they had. Let's not sugarcoat it, folks. That message you just got, it wasn't sent out of the blue. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. It was a move, a carefully timed act in a quiet performance they thought you'd still play a part in. But now, something's different. You've changed. And so when that notification popped up, instead of excitement, you felt a chill. That's not paranoia. That's your intuition talking, finally louder than your craving for closure. Imagine this. You're in a calm sea you fought to reach. No more storms, no more waves crashing your sanity, just peace. Then, without warning, a single stone is thrown in. Plop, a ripple, a distraction. That message, that's the stone. And now you're staring at the ripples thinking, what do I do? Do I answer? Do I ignore it? What if I miss out on something? What if they've changed? What if this is real this time? Pause. Breathe. Let's break that illusion first. People don't text after weeks or months of silence because they suddenly grew a conscience. Most don't reach out because they want to heal what they broke. They reach out to check if you're still broken. They want to know, do you still need me? Can I still get to you? Is the door still cracked open? It's not love. It's a pulse check, a test. And guess what? You don't owe them the answer they're hoping for. They knew exactly how long they've been gone. Don't fool yourself into thinking they forgot. People don't forget silence. Silence is loud. Absence is unforgettable. And that message, especially when it lacks context, is not innocence. It's ego checking in. Here's the lie you've been fed. If they come back, it means they care. No. If they cared, they wouldn't have vanished in the first place. If they cared, they would have been there, not just when they missed you, but when you needed them. Now let me ask you something deep. Why is it hard for you not to reply? Is it the fear of missing out, fear of looking cold, fear of losing a connection you once lived for? Be honest with yourself, because this is where the inner war begins, not with them, but with your own hope. And hope can be a dangerous thing when it's tied to someone who has a habit of disappearing. Metaphorically speaking, it's like someone lighting a match in your home, watching it burn, then returning with a smile, asking if they can sleep on your couch. The audacity isn't just offensive, it's psychological warfare, and your reply is the doorway back into destruction, unless you choose differently this time. There's a quote that sticks with me. The same hand that ghosts you is often the same hand that pokes you later, just to see if you'll still flinch. You hear that? This isn't affection. It's a poke, a test, a subtle attempt to drag you back into the loop. And if you flinch, if you reply with warmth, eagerness, or worse, with need, you tell them everything they wanted to know. You haven't moved on. But if you wait, if you hold the silence, if you choose to respond with self-control instead of emotion, something powerful happens. The narrative breaks. The script they wrote in their head starts falling apart. Because they weren't expecting this version of you, they weren't ready for the one who can feel the fear, but still stand still. For the one who doesn't need to react to feel worthy. For the one who pauses not out of confusion, but out of awareness. And make no mistake, they feel the silence now. Every second you don't respond twists their confidence. It eats away at the certainty they once had. It makes them wonder if they've lost you for real. And that, my friend, is the only revenge you'll ever need, becoming unreachable through inner peace. But why is it difficult? Because this isn't just about a message, it's about patterns, and patterns don't break without discomfort. You were trained to respond quickly, to people please, to fear the silence, to equate absence with loss and response with love, but you're unlearning all of that now. And yes, it will be hard. You'll stare at your phone, reread the message. You might even feel that old spark of excitement, the memory of what you once felt. But feelings are not facts, they're echoes. Echoes of who you used to be, not who you are now. and echoes don't deserve a stage in your present. They want to know if you're still waiting where they left you. But you're not. You moved, you rebuilt, you reclaimed your worth in silence, and you owe it to yourself to protect that progress, not throw it away for a breadcrumb wrapped in emoji. This is your test now, not just theirs. Are you replying to reconnect or to be seen? Are you responding from a place of power or from a need for closure? The truth is, you don't need closure from someone who ran. You already closed the chapter when you chose to be silent. That wasn't weakness, that was rebirth. So now, stand tall, don't flinch, don't fall into the trap of romanticizing the message. Read between the lines, recognize the energy behind it, because anyone who can vanish without explanation doesn't deserve immediate access when it's convenient for them. This moment is your battlefield, but you don't need to fight. Just stand, and standing still, calmly, consciously, is louder than any reply you could ever type. Write this in the comments. I don't flinch anymore. Let the world know you've seen the trick before, and this time you're not playing along. You've grown, you've earned your silence, you've mastered the pause, and stay with me, because what's coming next? We're going to talk about the kind of reply, if you ever choose to send one, that doesn't reopen wounds. It ends the cycle. A reply that leaves no room for their ego to hide. Strategic, cold, clean, and unforgettable. Number 2. Their hey isn't innocence. It's a move. They didn't come back because they missed you. They came back to see if you'd still break for them. That hey wasn't harmless. Don't fool yourself. It might look like just one word, casual, simple, light. But behind that word is a story. Behind that story is an agenda. And behind that agenda is someone trying to tiptoe back into your life without doing the hard work of earning a place in it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It always starts the same way. A dry message, often with no context, no apology, no explanation, just hey or thought of you today, or worse, how have you been? And in that moment, your heart hesitates, your chest tightens, because part of you wants to believe it's real, that maybe, just maybe, they finally came to their senses. But my friends, that's the same lie that's burned you before, and if you don't call it out now, you'll fall into the same fire again. Let's get something straight. If they really cared, they'd say more than, hey. If they really missed you, they'd come with clarity, not confusion. People who mean what they say don't play hide and seek with their words. They don't drop vague lines like emotional fishing hooks, hoping you'll bite and do the emotional labor for them. You're not bait. You're not a checkpoint in their boredom. You're not a pit stop for their loneliness. That, hey, it's not softness. It's strategy. It's not vulnerability. It's vanity. It's ego disguised as nostalgia. And if you take the bait, they'll reel you back into a cycle you spent months trying to escape. Imagine this. You've been walking through a desert. No water, no shade, just pain, disappointment, and silence. And when you finally find a well, finally feel peace again, they come back, offering you a single drop, a hey. As if that's supposed to quench all the emptiness they left behind. It's insulting, really. The lack of effort, the lack of awareness, the lack of depth. They know what they did. They remember the silence. They know the pain they caused. And still, this is what they offer? That's not love. That's ego begging for comfort, and your peace is not their playground. But here's the trick. They're counting on you to respond like before, quickly, kindly, eagerly. They're banking on your old habits, your heart that always wanted to believe the best, your soft spot for closure, your hope for reconnection. That's what they're testing, and that's what you must guard. You might be thinking, but what if it's different this time? What if they've changed? Let me ask you this. How have they changed? Did they reflect? Did they reach out with accountability? Or did they come back with a recycled line, hoping your wounds had become amnesia? See, people don't change through silence. They don't transform in absence without effort. Growth leaves traces. You can see it. You can feel it. And if all they're offering is a ghost of a sentence, you already know what it is. Not truth, not healing. Just a reminder of everything they refused to face when you needed them. And yet, your mind will play tricks on you. It'll whisper things like, maybe they're scared, maybe they don't know how to say more, maybe they're testing the waters. But let me give it to you straight. You're not a puddle to test. You're an ocean, and oceans don't entertain empty boats. You don't exist to ease their insecurity. You don't respond to whispers that don't come with weight. Silence isn't just a lack of noise, it's a mirror. And when you hold it up, people see themselves clearly. That's why they panic when you don't reply. That's why they hate your stillness, because your lack of reaction forces them to confront what they've done. And most can't handle that. They want comfort, not clarity. They want distraction, not depth. So here's what you do. You wait, not to punish, not to play games, but to evaluate. Observe their intention. Watch their effort. Give them time to reveal themselves, not just through what they say, but what they do when you don't instantly respond. Because the truth is, someone who really wants you back will make it clear. Not through mystery, not through emojis, through effort, through consistency, through presence. If they vanish again after one unanswered message, there's your answer. They didn't want you, they wanted access. And when that access wasn't instant, they moved on. That tells you everything. There's a quote I'll leave you with. Your silence will tell them more than your words ever could. And it's true. When you don't jump, when you don't chase, when you don't fold into their vague invitations, you shift the dynamic, you reclaim your energy, you show the universe and yourself that your worth no longer depends on breadcrumbs. I know it's not easy. I know silence can feel like punishment, especially when your heart still cares. But let me remind you, you're not staying silent to hurt them. You're staying silent to protect yourself. That's not cruelty. That's wisdom. That's self-respect. That's strength. You've come too far to go back to almost, to maybe, to kinda. You deserve clarity. You deserve effort. You deserve presence. And if someone can't offer that, then their hey means nothing. So next time you get that message, I want you to stop. Don't react. Don't panic. Don't fall into the illusion. Ask yourself, what does this cost me? Because sometimes replying is expensive. It costs your peace, your progress, your clarity, and no text, no matter how familiar, is worth that price. Write this in the comments. My peace isn't cheap. Say it. Own it. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your heart is no longer available for rent to anyone passing by with weak intentions. And stay with me, because in the next section, I'll show you exactly how to reply, if you ever choose to, and why the right response at the right time, delivered with the right energy, can shake their ego to its core. You've learned how to wait. Now you're going to learn how to respond on your terms, with clarity, with control, with calm so loud it drowns out every lie they thought they could hide behind. Number 3. Fast replies feed their ego, but waiting starves it. They don't want your love, they want your reaction, and the faster you give it, the deeper you sink into the illusion they still matter. Let's talk about that itch. You know the one. The burning urge to respond, that need to react, to say something, because maybe if you do, it'll give you peace, or answers, or closure. But here's the brutal truth, my friends. It won't. That itch isn't instinct. It's programming. emotional muscle memory trained by months or even years of seeking approval from the one who never truly saw you. You see the notification, your breath stumbles, your fingers twitch, and somewhere in your chest, a storm starts brewing. Maybe they texted, "Hey," or dropped a "thought of you today," and your brain lights up with possibilities. But what's actually happening in that moment is dangerous, because your healing is being tested by the very thing that once broke you. That message is a door, but not every door deserves to be opened. Some doors lead back into a burning building, and you know what we do, right? We tell ourselves it's harmless. I'll just see what they want. Maybe I'll sound cold and controlled. Maybe I'll show them I'm different now. But let me remind you, even cold replies carry warmth to someone who thrives on your attention. They don't need affection. They just need proof you're still reachable. Think about it. They disappear for weeks. They ignore your texts, your effort, your presence. Then, out of nowhere, they reappear, offering you breadcrumbs with a side of mystery. And if you respond in seconds, boom, you've just told them everything they wanted to know. You're still there. You're still accessible. You're still orbiting their sun, waiting for light. And that, my friends, feeds their ego more than any kind word ever could. Fast replies are the love language of desperation. They scream, "You still affect me." They say, "I haven't healed." But silence. Silence is strategy. Silence is self-control. Silence is standing at the battlefield and choosing not to fight a war that already cost you your peace. Let me paint it for you metaphorically. Picture your energy like a bank account. Every fast reply is a withdrawal. Every emotional reaction is a transaction. And the interest they collect? It's power, control, certainty. But when you wait, when you pause, when you breathe before responding, you flip the currency. You make them pay, not with words, but with doubt. You don't need to ghost them. You don't need to be rude. You just need to pause, because silence isn't passive. It's deliberate. It creates space. It builds tension. It invites them to sit in their own discomfort. And that discomfort? It's the mirror they've avoided for so long. They expect urgency. They expect the old you, the version who replied in 5 seconds flat, pouring your soul into someone who could barely type a full sentence. But now you wait. Not because you're playing games, but because you refuse to be played anymore. There's a quote I want you to remember. Healing is when you see the message, feel the urge, and still choose to protect your peace. That's power, that's growth, that's the new version of you, and it's terrifying to the one who once controlled your reactions like puppet strings. But let's be honest, it's not easy. Waiting feels like a risk. What if they lose interest? What if you miss your chance? What if they think you're being petty? Let me tell you something raw. They lost the right to your immediacy the moment they chose silence over presence. You don't owe quick replies to someone who once treated you like an option. You don't owe warmth to someone who made you question your worth. And you certainly don't owe your energy to someone who only remembers you when their ego feels empty. They're not confused. They're calculated. If they wanted a genuine connection, they'd show consistency, not crumbs. They'd bring effort, not ambiguity. And if they truly respected you, they wouldn't come back with half-hearted messages. They'd come back with accountability. But the second you rush to reply, you rewrite the entire story. You erase the silence you built. You tell them, "You can still press this button and I'll answer." Don't do it. You've spent too long rebuilding. Too many nights convincing yourself to let go. Too many days reminding yourself that love doesn't abandon without explanation. So why let a single message tear down what your silence worked so hard to protect? Let me ask you this. Would you run back into a room that once suffocated you just because someone knocked? No. Then why treat your emotional peace any differently? Silence isn't childish. It's mature. It says, I'm not in a rush. I'm observing. It says, if you're real, you'll prove it. And most importantly, it says, I've learned how to pause even when I feel the pull. The power is in the pause. And that pause, it makes them spiral. They refresh the chat, they check their phone, they overthink, they regret, they wonder if they've lost you. Because you didn't give them what they came for, a reaction. And here's the thing, they won't admit it, but that silence hits harder than any angry reply ever could. Because now they don't know what you're thinking. They can't predict your moves. You've become unreadable, and unreadable means unshakable. That's what true presence is. It's not noise, it's knowing when to speak and when to let silence do the talking. So next time that message comes and your fingers itch and your heart races, pause. Let the silence breathe. Let them wonder. Let them earn it. Because you've changed. You don't chase. You don't rush. You don't flinch. Write it in the comments. I wait with power. Say it out loud. Type it below. Let it be a reminder that your silence is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the quiet before the storm they didn't expect. And stay with me, because next we're going deeper into what silence does to their ego, and how the absence you built becomes a mirror they can't run from anymore. Number 4, your silence is now the loudest thing in the room. They expected you to reply. You gave them a void, and in that quiet space, their ego started to crumble. Let's talk about what really happens when you don't reply. Not because you're playing games, but because you finally understand the power of restraint. Because you finally realized that some people don't deserve words, they deserve the weight of your absence. See, silence isn't emptiness, it's a message, a very loud one, but only the emotionally intelligent can hear it. And let me tell you, the ones who once toyed with you, they hear it now, loud and clear. They just won't admit it. Because silence strips them of control. And for someone who fed off your emotions, your reactions, your vulnerability, losing control is like oxygen being taken away. They sent the message. They expected the old version of you, the one who would jump, the one who couldn't bear not to respond. But instead, they got silence. No read receipt, no green light, just stillness. And that stillness, that's the real echo. That's what bounces around in their head now like a ghost they can't get rid of. It's haunting. Because what they really wanted wasn't connection, it was confirmation. Confirmation that they could still get to you, that they still lived rent-free in your mind, that they could disappear, reappear, and you'd light up like a street lamp when they walked by. But this time, nothing lit up. This time, the door stayed closed. And now they're outside, knocking, hoping, doubting. That silence you're holding? It's not just a pause, it's a declaration. It says, I don't live in your games anymore. It says, I see through you now. It says, I've rebuilt what you tried to destroy, and you're not welcome in it anymore. And that's what destroys them. Not a harsh reply, not a long paragraph explaining your pain, but the lack of any reply at all. Because now they're alone with their thoughts. Now they're the ones staring at the screen. Now they're the one asking, did I mess up? Did I lose them for good? Why aren't they answering? And for someone who used to hold your emotions in their hands like a toy, that confusion is unbearable. It's funny, isn't it? You used to be the one refreshing your messages, checking your phone, waiting, hoping, feeling like you weren't enough. And now the tables have turned. Now they're the one living in uncertainty, and your silence is the teacher. They won't say it out loud, but they feel it. The absence, the shift, the calm in you that no longer craves their chaos. And that kind of calm is terrifying to someone who once thrived on being your emotional chaos. Let me hit you with this truth. Silence isn't revenge, it's protection, it's presence. It's the boundary between who you were and who you're becoming. You're not being cold, you're being clear. You're saying, if you want to come back into my life, you'll have to come with more than crumbs. You'll need truth, consistency, real effort. And that terrifies them, because it's so much easier for them to send a quick hey and get the old reaction than to actually face what they did, to face what they caused, to acknowledge how their absence broke you. But now they're the one breaking, and you didn't have to lift a finger. Metaphorically speaking, you've become a locked vault, and they lost the key. They're banging on the door, hoping the old password still works. But they don't realize you've changed the entire system. You don't respond to noise anymore. You only respond to substance. And here's what makes it even more poetic. They thought your silence was temporary, a phase, a pout. But the longer you stay still, the more they realize it's permanent. You're not holding your breath. You're breathing easier without them. And that realization, it's a dagger to the ego. Let me ask you this. How many times did you break your own heart just to keep the conversation going? How many late-night replies did you send just to feel like you mattered? How many times did you explain yourself to someone who never even asked the right questions? Too many, and that's why your silence now is sacred. It's not passive, it's earned. It came with tears, with confusion, with growing pains. You didn't just wake up one day and decide not to care. You learned not to need their validation. You learned how to sit in your own worth. And that learning, that rebuilding, it deserves protection. They'll keep checking. They'll keep wondering. They might even send another message, maybe one with a little more emotion this time, a little more curiosity, a little more desperation, because silence does that. It builds pressure. And eventually that pressure bursts their bubble of control. And here's the twist. They thought you needed closure, but silence became your closure. They thought you were just quiet, but you were healing. They thought you were ignoring them, but you were finally listening to yourself. There's power in that. Unshakable, undeniable power. And it's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not full of speeches or explanations. It's quiet, it's calm, it's solid. And that's what breaks people who only knew how to operate in chaos. They don't know what to do when their storm doesn't shake you. They thought they could come back and press play, that you were paused, not finished. But now they realize they weren't dealing with a pause. They were dealing with a permanent exit. You didn't just stop replying. You left the room entirely. And you took your worth with you. So if you're doubting your silence right now, don't. It's working, it's speaking, it's screaming everything they didn't want to hear. You no longer have access to me. And that's why they're spiraling. Write this in the comments. My silence speaks volumes. Let it be your shield, your banner, your declaration to the world and to yourself. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need to justify your calm. You don't need to respond to ego dressed as affection, because silence, when held with self-worth, is the loudest truth you'll ever speak. Stay with me, because what's coming next is the art of the cold reply. If you ever choose to speak again, you'll know exactly how to do it. Not with weakness, not with hope, but with precision, clarity, and power that dismantles their illusions one word at a time. Number 5. If you reply, do it like someone who doesn't need them. It's not the reply that hurts them. It's the calm behind it, the absence of emotion, the proof that you've changed and they no longer matter. So let's say you do reply. Maybe it's been hours, maybe days. Maybe you've waited long enough to know it's not an emotional impulse. It's a choice, a controlled decision, not a craving. But now comes the real test. Because if you respond the way you used to, sweet, software curious, hopeful. Then you've just given them confirmation that your silence was temporary, that your evolution was an act, that they still hold the strings. But if you respond like someone who no longer needs them, everything changes. The game flips entirely, and the person who once made you feel small suddenly starts shrinking in the mirror of your clarity. Because here's the truth, folks. When you've done the healing, the hardest thing to fake is indifference. But the most powerful way to show you've healed is to embody that indifference with grace. This doesn't mean being rude or bitter or sarcastic. No, that still gives away too much emotion. That still says, "You affected me." Real strength is when your words carry no charge, no desperation, no warmth, just neutral clarity, like you're speaking to a stranger, and in many ways, you are. Think about it. They were gone, absent, silent. They didn't care when your chest was tight at 3 a.m. They weren't there when you doubted your own worth. So now that they've resurfaced with a half-effort message and vague curiosity, why should your reply carry weight? It shouldn't. It mustn't. That's where your power lives, in the emotional distance you've built, the space between who you were and who you are now. A reply from your old self would have been emotional, open-ended, filled with question marks and hope. But now it's measured, cool, unshaken. Picture it like this. They walked into the room expecting a candle, a soft flicker, but instead they found a mirror. And that mirror, your calm response, shows them exactly what they lost. Not in anger, not in fire, but in your refusal to perform the way they remember. Let's be honest, they didn't want a conversation, they wanted confirmation. So when you respond without giving them the emotional food they came for, it messes with them deeply. They can't place you anymore, can't predict you, can't read between your lines because your lines are straight now. That's what control looks like, and that's what hurts them most. A reply like, "Hope you're doing well," might sound harmless, but from someone they expected to gush, it stings. It's like being served cold water when they wanted fire. You gave them nothing to feed on, no affection, no bitterness, just emotional neutrality. That, my friend, is a master move. Because the truth is, they didn't miss you. They missed the version of you who still needed closure, who still replied instantly, who still bent to make them comfortable. But that version doesn't live here anymore. You've outgrown that emotional space, and now, when you reply, it's from a higher place, from stillness. You ever see a surgeon panic mid-operation? No, because precision saves lives, and that's what your response needs to be. Surgical, precise, sharp, not with venom, but with clean-cut boundaries. Don't over-explain, don't defend your silence, don't apologize for your growth. Your reply doesn't need context because your absence already explained everything. And if they ask, "Why did you disappear?" or "Why didn't you reply sooner?" that's your cue to exit, because anyone who turns your healing into an interrogation doesn't deserve access to your peace. Let's break a common lie real quick. If I reply coldly, I might ruin my chance to reconnect. Here's the truth behind that. If someone is real, if someone has grown, they'll respect your calm. They'll recognize it for what it is, the result of deep hurt and deep healing, and they'll match it with effort, not entitlement. But if your coldness makes them vanish, that's not a loss, that's clarity. That's proof that they were only chasing emotional supply. And folks, you are not emotional supply. You are not a vending machine for validation. You're not the old, soft version who made excuses for silence, who found meaning in mixed signals, who settled for being half seen. You've changed. Your energy is no longer cheap. It's curated, protected, intentional, and if you choose to speak again, it will be because you decided, not because they popped back in with a line they probably copied and pasted from someone else's regrets. This is about presence, self-respect, dignity, and here's the beautiful part. When you reply from that place, from a calm that's been earned, it doesn't open a door, it closes a chapter, it draws a line. It says, "I'm here, but I'm not who you remember." And that truth is more devastating than any emotional outburst. Because people don't expect you to grow, they expect you to pause, wait, hope, crumble. So when they find you standing, balanced, unmoved, composed, it disorients them. It shakes the narrative they built in your absence. And for once, they are the ones left confused. That's why your reply, if given, must be intentional, not from fear, not from loneliness, not from curiosity, but from certainty. You don't speak to reconnect, you speak to reaffirm your boundary. And let me say this clearly, you are not obligated to respond at all. Some people deserve silence forever, but if you do choose to reply, make sure your words are clean. No mess, no openings, no fuel for old fires. Just a short sentence, or maybe two, delivered with the grace of someone who doesn't need validation. Because silence dismantles illusions, and calm replies, they finish the job. Write this in the comments. My words are chosen. Let that be your reminder, that your energy is no longer impulsive, that your power is in your presence, not your reaction. And stay with me, because what comes next is even more important. We're going to talk about how their ego reacts when they realize your reply isn't a bridge. It's a wall, a beautiful, clean wall that they will never climb again. Number 6. They asked why you disappeared, but you owe them nothing. Disappearing isn't betrayal, it's survival, and sometimes silence is the only scream that doesn't need to be explained. So now they're asking questions, maybe not directly, maybe through a little guilt-wrapped message, a subtle dig, or worse, the soft voice of false concern. Why did you go quiet? Where did you go? Why didn't you say anything? But let's be real, my friends. This isn't curiosity. This isn't care. This is control trying to wear a kind face. It's ego pretending to be innocence. Because what they're really saying is, why didn't you stay where I left you? What they're really asking is, why didn't you wait for me to come back whenever I felt like it? They don't want the truth. They want access. They want explanation without accountability. They want to pull you back in without ever admitting they pushed you away. And that, right there, is the psychological game most people never see coming. That question, why did you disappear, isn't a doorway to healing, it's a trapdoor, because the moment you try to explain, the moment you start justifying your silence, you're giving them power again. You're letting them shift the blame, flip the narrative, make your pain look like abandonment. But your silence was never abandonment. It was a boundary, a necessary exit, a retreat to save your soul. See, people love to act shocked when you finally walk away, but they never count the nights you stayed when your heart was breaking. They never acknowledge the times you swallowed your feelings just to keep the peace. The apologies you made for things they did, the messages you reread, the calls you waited for, the hope you kept alive while they gave you nothing but uncertainty. No, they don't remember that part. They only notice the silence. Because silence to them is inconvenient. It means they no longer control the tempo. It means you stopped dancing to their music. And now that you've turned the volume down, they want answers. But let me tell you something raw. You don't owe them that. You don't owe explanations to someone who vanished when you needed answers. You don't owe comfort to someone who only returns when the silence starts echoing back their own reflection. You don't owe words to someone who never once sat down to truly hear yours. You left because you had to, because staying became a slow death, because explaining yourself to someone who never really listened started to feel like screaming into a void. And let's not pretend it was easy. Walking away in silence is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because it doesn't come with applause. It doesn't get you sympathy. It gets you confusion, judgment, labels like cold, dramatic, or childish. But in reality, it's courage, it's clarity, it's self-preservation at its purest form. There's a quote that hits deep. You don't walk away because you stopped caring. You walk away because they stopped noticing. They didn't notice. They didn't show up. They didn't offer effort, presence, or respect. And so you chose the only thing left, distance, not as revenge, not to manipulate, but to protect the pieces of you that were being chipped away every time you stayed silent in their presence. But now that you're gone, now that your silence has taken root, they feel the absence. And they're uncomfortable. They want closure, not for your sake, but for theirs. Because it's hard to admit they caused the silence. It's hard to face the fact that their inconsistency was the reason you pulled away. So when they ask, "Why did you disappear?" understand what they're really doing. They're testing the lock. They're hoping your silence was temporary, that your healing has a back door, that you'll crumble at the sound of their confusion and rush to reassure them. No, I didn't mean to leave. But you did mean it, maybe not at first. Maybe it started as space, as breathing room, as a small pause to think. But over time, that space turned into wisdom, and that wisdom grew into strength. And that strength, it's the reason you haven't run back yet. They're just not used to it, not used to someone leaving and staying gone, not used to being the one left on red, not used to the mirror you've become, a reflection of all the things they refuse to face. So when they ask for an explanation, ask yourself this: what would you even say? That you cried yourself to sleep while they acted indifferent, that you broke in silence while they posted like nothing happened, that your absence was born in a place they never dared to go, inside themselves. They wouldn't understand, not because they're incapable, but because understanding would require them to admit they caused the very silence they now question. So, no, you don't owe them a monologue. You don't need to craft the perfect message explaining your exit like some emotional essay. Because silence itself is an answer. It's the most honest thing you've ever said. And if they still don't get it, if they still think your distance is pettiness, if they still call it disappearing, that's fine. Let them. Let them stay confused. Let them sit in their own questions, because that discomfort, that uncertainty, that's what accountability feels like on the receiving end. You've spent too long trying to be understood by someone who only ever listened to themselves. Now it's time to be at peace with not being understood, because your job was never to explain your pain. Your job was to survive it. Write this in the comments. My silence was survival. Let it echo. Let it burn through the noise. Let it speak louder than any reply you could ever give. And stay with me, because up next, we're going to talk about the most powerful shift of all. When your silence becomes your new identity. When your absence isn't just a phase, it's a permanent upgrade. And the person they once knew doesn't live here anymore. Number 7, you disappeared and became someone they'll never have access to again. You didn't disappear to teach them a lesson. You disappeared to remember who you are, and now that version doesn't fit in their story anymore. You want to know what really shakes someone to their core? It's not a screaming match. It's not a desperate text. It's not even an emotional goodbye. No. It's silence. Consistent, unbothered, grounded silence. The kind of silence that doesn't come from pride, but from power, from self-respect, from a version of you that no longer needs to explain why you walked away. They thought you disappeared to punish them, that you were playing hard to get, that you were sulking, waiting, hoping they'd come chase you. But what they didn't realize is that your disappearance wasn't about them, it was about you, about your survival, about reclaiming yourself from the emotional wreckage they left behind. And once you reclaimed it, you didn't just walk away, you evolved. You see, when you disappear the right way, you don't come back the same. You come back sharper, calmer, unshakable. And that is what they can't handle. They came back expecting the person they left behind, the one who made excuses for them, the one who cracked jokes to lighten the silence, the one who wrote essays to explain your pain. But this time, you gave them nothing. And that absence, that's when they started to feel your presence like never before. Because silence, my friends, it echoes. It creeps in when their ego is loud. It slips into their thoughts late at night when they're scrolling and don't see your name. It whispers in the spaces where you used to speak. It grows in the void where you used to overextend. That silence becomes your replacement, and it's louder than any goodbye you could have written. They thought they could walk out of your life, and you'd stay paused, like a bookmarked page waiting to be turned again. But you closed the book. You burned the bookmark. You rewrote the entire story. And in your new story, they're not the center anymore. They're not even a chapter. They're a footnote, a warning, a lesson wrapped in a name that no longer sparks. But let's get honest for a second. This shift didn't happen overnight. There were nights you wanted to text back, mornings you stared at the screen, heart racing, fingers hovering. Days where silence felt like a weight and you questioned if you were being too cold. But now look at you. Look at how far you've come. You sat with the silence long enough that it became your strength. You faced the echo and found clarity. And they disappeared with ease and returned with expectation. Expectation that you'd still be there. That the old you hadn't changed. That your heart still beat for them the same way. But the truth is, they took too long. They stayed gone for just enough time that your heart didn't break when they came back. It closed. That's what growth does. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait to be noticed. It doesn't look back to see if they've arrived. Growth keeps walking, and by the time they catch up, they don't recognize you anymore, and that terrifies them. Because now your presence comes with a cost. It's no longer free. It's no longer given out to anyone with sweet words and inconsistent effort. Your energy is sacred now. Your time is guarded. Your love is earned, not assumed. And when they realize that they no longer have all access to the softest parts of you, that's when the regret sets in. That's when the late-night texts turn into paragraphs, when the hey becomes I messed up. But you don't hear apologies with the same ears anymore. You don't hear promises the way you used to, because you're not listening with desperation. You're listening with discernment. You didn't disappear to hurt them. You disappeared to heal you. You didn't walk away to play games. You walked away because the only way to save yourself was to stop explaining why you were drowning in their presence. And now, you don't just protect your peace, you embody it. And here's the truth they never expected to face. Sometimes when someone disappears, they come back stronger, colder, calmer, and no longer accessible. That's what you are now. You're not ignoring them. You're just living without them. And that, for someone who thought they'd always have you, is a feeling they can't shake. So if they ever ask again, why did you leave? Just smile. Not because you're hiding pain, but because you've made peace with it. Your disappearance wasn't the end. It was the beginning of your resurrection. Let them sit with the silence. Let them wrestle with the new version of you. Let them realize that while they were busy entertaining options, you were rebuilding yourself into someone who no longer begs to be chosen. And if they want access now, they'll have to do more than knock. They'll have to rebuild the bridge. They'll have to walk with accountability. They'll have to prove with action, not words, that they deserve even the chance to speak to the person you've become. But chances are, they won't make it that far, because you, my friend, no longer wait at broken doors. Write it in the comments. I've outgrown who they left. Let it be your closing line, your final sentence in a chapter they thought they could reopen. Let it be the affirmation that protects your future from the past that tried to drag you back. And if this message resonated with your soul, if it lit a fire inside the version of you that's done explaining, done chasing, done shrinking, then press that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this with someone who's still staring at a message, still stuck in that silent loop, still hoping for the apology that may never come. Because this space isn't just for closure, it's for rebirth. And every video from here forward, it's not about getting them back. It's about never losing yourself again. You disappeared to survive, but you stayed gone to thrive. And that is your victory.